So the first question that comes while reading any discipline is that why is the discipline important and what is the discipline about? Or maybe in the reverse order, that what is a discipline about and why is it important? So the first question is what is linguistics and why is it important? Why is it important to study linguistics?
There can be various answers to the question what is linguistics depending on which aspect of the way you study language is in question here. So if you ask this question, let's say in 1940s or something, it would have a very different answer. If you ask this question today in a particular university, it would have one answer. If you ask this question in some other university where nobody cares about Chomsky's opinion, it would have another answer. I guess linguistics is simply a study of various different questions that we have in our mind. So obviously, we would like to know what is the grammar of our languages, and we would also like to know the is there any way in which we can generate the meanings of sentences that every human being understands regarding the language the human being speaks. So the basic idea is that we need a theory of the sounds that language produces. So that is what is covered in phonology, I guess. And then we need a theory of the meaning that that a person who speaks a language seems to understand. So when you know a language, it appears that you know three things. You know the sound of the language, obviously. So you don't well, the sound is kind of conventional also, but whatever it is, you don't speak Hindi or English in such a strange and odd way that no one can understand you at all. So the sounds are kind of they are recognizable by other people in some sense. So we have some idea of how to speak a particular language. We have an idea of what each sentence means. We may be vague in our meanings. That's fine. Sometimes someone can push me and ask me, what do you mean by this sentence? But largely speaking, if I said that the cat is having a breakfast now, you understand what I mean by it. Or the dog is chasing the cat, or I have to go to office now. Everybody can understand what I mean by this. All you have to know is, by the way, the English language or if, whatever language I'm speaking, you need to know. So you know the sounds of the language, you know the meaning of the language, and you also know the grammar of the language. So you don't in English you don't say runs John, you say John runs. So you don't say interviewing Shivai is, you say Shivai is interviewing. So you don't say anything at all, anything that comes to your mind. You speak in a specific. There is a specific grammar that is being employed, and so therefore there are three kinds of knowledge minimum that we possess when we know a language. So the question of linguistics is, in some sense, what do we know when we know a language? So there are three things minimum. One is obviously the sounds of the language, the other is the grammar of the language, and the third is the semantics, that is the meaning of the language. The meaning is called semantics, and the grammar you can call syntax, if that word can be used, and it is used generally. Some people simply use grammar, and then you can say that the study of the sounds is something like phonology. There are many other things. So when we say dog and when we say dogs, so we add an S to dog. So this is a notion of morphology. So I say walk, I say walked. That is ed is added to walk. So that is morphology. So you add certain elements to a word, and it takes on past tense or future tense or present tense or whatever. So the idea is that, or plural, for instance, dog and dogs, something like that. So we have also these notions of morphology. So you add certain elements to a particular word, and you get a certain different meaning of what you are saying. So we know the morphology of a language. We tend to know the sound. We have a very good idea of the syntax of a language. People don't speak in strange, peculiar ways. They may do so, but largely this is not the case. So, and we also know the meanings of the sentences that we speak and others understand us in case we are speaking the same language. So I'm of course speaking in very broad terms here. So, but this is largely what we understand by the subject of linguistics. The question is, what do we know when we know a language? Now, this is a very modern way of putting it, by the way. So maybe the subject of linguistics could mean something like, if you ask this in 1940s or 1930s, maybe it would mean something like linguistics is the study of languages, and you write down the grammar of the language, and you sort of translate aboriginal languages, and there is a way of translation, and so on and so forth. So in those days, this specific question was not there. What do we know when we know a language? So that question was not there. So it is today that we have this question in mind, and it's not necessarily true that everyone asks this question. People study language from different ways, but the broadest way in which people study is they study the sound, the syntax, the semantics, and morphology. You may study other things. So there's something called pragmatics that also can be studied. So if I say certain words that insult another person, or they inadvertently insult another person, let's say I don't wish to insult another person, but they still insult another person, there is a certain pragmatic effect that my words are having. So I may not intend, and I may not, even the words literally may not mean to insult anyone, but they may be taken as an insult by someone else. So the pragmatics deals with these social aspects of language where meaning is not taken literally, but it is taken in different ways. So we know this from Grice's paper, Conversational Implicatures, and his idea of conversational implicatures.
Could you
So
please name the paper again?
I think his paper is, I'm trying to remember the name of the paper. It's a very famous paper. He discusses the question of conversational implicatures in it. So I'm trying to remember the name of the paper. It's just escaping my mind right now.
Right. What's the name of the author?
Grice, Paul Grice.
Right. Okay.
So
So,
these are the four
so
things you study.
right, right. You mentioned four major aspects. One was phonology, that is the sound of the language, right? One is the syntax, which could be the grammar of the language. And please correct me if I'm assessing it correct or not. And third would be the semantics, the meaning of the language. And then there is also morphology and pragmatics, right? Pragmatics
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
social
yeah, yeah.
aspect of the language, right? So
Mhm.
the question comes when we talk about linguistics, right? We know it's more or less a study of language, maybe majorly in these four or five aspects. But then,
Mhm.
what do we talk about when we talk about language in linguistics? Do we talk about all the languages that are there, right? Do we talk about a specific language per se, right? Or do we talk about the structures of the how structures of languages or how they are encompassed or corroborated in a way? What do we talk about it then?
Oh, we do talk about almost all of these aspects, but in a particular way. So, largely speaking, what linguists wish to explain is how is it possible for a child to learn a language when the input is so poor? So, the poverty of input is has a technical name for it. It is called the argument. It is called the poverty of stimulus argument. There is hardly any stimulus that the child has to learn a language. So the language that the child produces is extremely rich in structure, but the input that the child receives is very poor. So there must be this gap between the poverty of input and the richness of output has to be explained. So the subject of linguistics is about explaining how can we resolve this gap between the input and the output, like what exactly is happening such that this gap can be covered. And so it turns out that if you take a child, let's say from New York, let's say it's just like 2 months old or something, and you bring it to India, well, it will learn Hindi if it is growing up in a Hindi environment, or it will learn Manipuri. You take a Manipuri kid who's like 2 months old or something, you take him to New York, he's going to learn English. So a child has the ability to learn any language, and so from there it appears as if the child, when it is introduced to particular kinds of sounds, it picks up the data very quickly and it generates a kind of language which is recognizable by others, and people speaking around them, around the kid, are able to understand what the kid is saying, and the kid also understands them. You might of course say that this is just a social thing, right? So it is I mean, my parents teach me, or it's just a simple thing, my teachers in school teach me, so that's the end of the matter really. What else can be there? But the problem is that it's not social, it's not obvious that it is social. We have very good reason to believe that there is indeed a poverty of stimulus, that is the stimulus is very poor, and the knowledge of language generated by a child, let's say a 2-year-old child, a 3-year-old child, is astonishing in its range and capacity. It is simply astonishing. So the richness of the output needs to be explained because the input is extremely poor. So that's the real subject of linguistics. How do we explain this unusual richness of output from the equally unusual richness of the poverty of input? Many people, by the way, challenge the poverty of input. Indeed, this also answers the question that you raised before about the importance of the field of linguistics. So, the importance of the field of linguistics is that it actually tells us, it is essentially saying that language is a mirror of the mind. That is, there must be something in our mind such that it processes this very poor input and it gives out this very rich structure. And so that tells you that the human mind possesses certain mechanisms such that it is able to do this job. A chimpanzee or an ape or an insect or a bee, you can keep speaking to a dog or a cat. It may be a very small cat, maybe it's just like 1 month old. You can speak English forever to the cat, but it will never learn English. But strangely enough, a 1 month old child will be able to learn the language that you are speaking to. So why is this difference there between a small kitten and a child? Why is there a difference like this? I mean, they are both biological creatures. So there must be some difference regarding the mental apparatus.
Two things you pointed out. First was that there is a very limited amount of input that goes into a child's brain, and the output is variably larger than the input, right? One. So I get this, and there are different schools who have different models or approaches to go with this theory, right?
Hmm.
The second is you mentioned language as the mirror of the mind.
Hmm.
I want to understand, what does it mean, language being the mirror of the mind? What is
It,
it that we are trying to know
it
with this statement?
it could mean various different things. So, what a linguist would mean by it is that, well, we cannot say a chimpanzee doesn't possess a mind at all. Of course, it has some mind. It has the ability to move around, it can manipulate its environment, and it can also hunt in remarkably intelligent ways. It is not as if a tiger hunts without any intelligence. So, they have some mental ability, they have perception, hearing, they are able to process information. But the mental ability that a child employs in learning a language is simply not evident in any of our either our evolutionary history or indeed in the rest of nature. So that suggests that there's something very special about a human being. That is that a human being has a capacity which no other species possesses, and language apparently is the fundamental capacity we possess. So from philosophy we know that, I guess from the Greeks on and just about anyone else who does philosophy, they always say the same thing, that man is a rational creature, that we have this rational capacity in us. We may not necessarily reason properly, but we have the capacity to reason, and this capacity to reason simply can't exist unless there is a language in us. So, complex reasoning, we are able to do mathematics and physics, and we are able to write big novels, and they are sensible kind of stories that the people write. How do they do all this? They do this because they have mastered the language, and that language allows them to express their thoughts. And so these thoughts are very complex, of course. Just like when I'm speaking to you, there are certain thoughts that are being expressed. These are very complicated thoughts. And so, when a human being is able to do all this and no other creature is able to do it, the question arises, how does a human being do this? There must be something special about a human being. Otherwise, why is it the case that a kitten doesn't learn Hindi when it is spoken, Hindi is spoken to a kitten or to a small puppy or to anyone? I mean, just take a small chimpanzee or this baby chimpanzee. Okay, you can keep speaking language to it, but it's just never going to pick it up. So a human being has something special about him or her, and we can figure it out by actually looking at linguistic behavior. From the linguistic behavior, we can figure out that there is something in the mind, some mechanism exists which is generating this linguistic behavior. It's an amazing form of behavior, actually. It is what Chomsky says, it is appropriate to the context, it is free from stimulus. And so these are very remarkable elements of our linguistic behavior. We utter new sentences to each other whenever we meet. If I said the same sentences to everyone, sometimes people do that out of habit, but generally we always say the same, this different things to different people. And so that also suggests that the use of language is creative, it is free from stimulus, and it is appropriate to the context. So when you ask me a question about language, I don't talk about astrophysics, right? I have to say something which is appropriate to the context. So that also is a very important matter. So human beings are able to do all this very easily, but the issue is what explains this ability. There must be some explanation for this. Of course, we are very far from an explanation, but at least we appear to have some idea about, let us say, the syntax of a language. So not necessarily about meaning or anything else, but definitely about syntax, we have at least some idea.
So, all right, I get a very fair idea of what you're talking, right? And I have two things. One, there is an idea of language, and then there is an idea of language development, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
then there are approaches by different linguists or different philosophers, right, in their idea to study language and the idea of language development. So I want to
Correct.
know, there are different schools that go about it. There are the behaviorist, there is the idea of Chomsky again, there are the cognitive, I cannot recall the name, but something that has to do with cognitive sciences or just cognition. So, what are these theories about? How and what is their basic differences? Do they differ about the idea of language per se, or do they differ about the idea of language development in child per se? Right, this is how a child acquires a language, differs in their approaches, or do they already differ that this is language for someone and this is language for the idea of language for both these schools are different. So, what do they differ on, these different schools and these different approaches?
That's a very good question, actually. They differ on both these notions. One is the notion of language, and one is the notion of language development. Now, largely speaking, if you look at philosophers or even even common people, everyone believes that language is just some kind of it is socially learned. If I have to learn Hindi, I speak to you. If I am a very small kid, if I am just running around with you, playing with you, you speak Hindi to me, and I socially, by engaging with you, I learn the language, or I engage with my parents and learn the language. That's really all that there is to it. So largely, philosophers take it as a social thing. It is There is a language like English existing somewhere in the public space, and I, as a kid, have to get hold of this language and master it, and then use it to express my thoughts and communicate with others. So communication is the key element in a philosopher's story of language. I am communicating with you. This communication has to take place. Okay, so for this we use language. So the very core of language for for a philosopher, or just about anyone, actually, it's a very natural thought if you think about it, that language is meant for communication. It is just the core element of language. So that's the idea of language the philosophers have. Linguists have a very different notion. I am speaking of linguists who follow the Chomskyan view. Not everyone follows it. So linguists don't. Now the philosophers' view is sometimes described as what is called e-language, that is externalized language. So philosophers believe that language is a set of sentences. It's a set of sentences. These sentences are, you can call them abstract entities if you wish. You can have different conceptions of what these sentences are, but the job of a kid is to master the way in which these sentences have to be used for communication. So that's the basic idea. And these sentences essentially describe the world, or they are essentially world oriented, so to speak. So that's why they are called externalist notions of language, and meaning itself is an external thing. Unless and until I interact with the world, no meaning is going to be available. So that's the standard externalist picture that philosophers have. Linguists have a different picture. So the philosophers have the picture that language is external, and it's like an object that I pick up, right? So my mobile phone is there with me. So just like that, English language is there with me. So I just pick it up and I have to learn it. Just like I have to learn French language, I don't know it, so I go to an institute, and it's like an object. I pick it up and I take a certificate course and something, and I just learn it. So that's one way to look at language. The other is the linguist way. Also, philosophers, if you go back, you'll see that they believe that language development is nothing great about it. It's just, you just pick it up from the society, essentially. You speak to your parents, you speak to your relatives, people coming and going out, you just pick it up. That's it. There is no such thing as poverty of stimulus for a philosopher in learning a language. There's nothing like this. So they have a specific view of language development, specific view of language itself as an external entity which you just pick up to use for communication. It's like picking up a hammer to do some work, right? So I think Wittgenstein uses this idea of language being like a tool, though his notions are very complicated. But the linguistic view is this, and by linguistic I here mean the Chomskyan linguistic view. That view is that language is not an external object. It's not like a pen that I pick up and use. No, it's not like that. It's not like a hammer that I pick up and use or a mobile phone. No, it's not like that. Language is internally driven. That is, it is something which is innate to a human being. The structure of language is already there in me, and the input when it comes in, my there are certain mechanisms in my mind, which is what actually is language. Those mechanisms generate an ability in me to understand an infinite number of sentences. So there is no such thing as English in the world. There is no language like English in the world. There is no language like French in the world. There is no language like Spanish or Manipuri or Assamese or Nagamese or anything. Nothing. None of these languages there in the world. So sometimes they say this that languages are an epiphenomenon. So I mean, the idea is that none of these things are simply not there in the world. So these are languages are simply produced as sounds that are coming in. There is a structure in the minds that process that sound, and it generates an ability in you to understand an infinite number of sentences. So that's what language really is. It is this generative engine that allows you to give a structure to every sentence and make you understand that sentence. This is what language is. So it is internally driven. Secondly, they have a notion that it is not socially learned. It is true, of course, that I cannot learn Hindi by just interacting with people who are speaking English. So that's perfectly obvious that in that sense we socially learn a language. But it is not socially learned because this mechanism is there in my mind. It is not given by society to me. Just like you have eyes and ears, these eyes and ears are not given by society to you. They are given by they just grow in you. They are natural to you. In the same way, language is natural to us. So language is not an external object. Also, they don't mean to say that language is used for communication. They don't have a problem. Linguists don't have a problem saying that language is used for communication. That's fine. You can use it whichever way you wish, but that's not the purpose of language. The structure that language has is not. There is nothing in the structure of language that suggests that it has anything to do with communication. You can communicate with it. That's fine, but it has nothing to do with the structure that the language has. So that's the two. Those are the two differences. One is as you yourself pointed out. One is regarding language development. That the linguists believe that language develops very, very quickly in a child, very, very quickly, and so we cannot give a social explanation of this. So by 2 years old, the child is learning 8 words per day. This is an astonishing feat by any. I can't learn 8 French words per day. It's going to be very tough for me. So some people believe that the some scholars, academicians, linguists, they believe that the ability to learn a language goes down after the age of 12. So it's going to be very tough for a person to learn a language after the age of 12. Well, at least I have never learned a language after the age of 12, so I can't speak for others. But there are people who actually pick up languages quite easily. So, but it seems as if
So,
it is very difficult to learn a language naturally with perfect ease after the age of 12. With effort, of course, you can.
so two contrasting views. One is that language is socially acquired. This is what
Yes.
a behaviorist would say. And then somebody like Chomsky or any Chomskyan would say that language is innate to humans. And there is a sense of biological endowment through which we learn or we already acquire the given language, which is
Yeah.
already there. Or maybe we do not even acquire it in the very first place. It is already there. We just recollect it. Would that be the right word to use?
Yeah, in a sense, the recollection theory is indeed right. But That's a metaphorical way of putting it. I mean, it's just that I don't recollect Hindi. What happens is
Right.
that
Okay.
some input comes in, and the mechanism is there. The mechanism acts on that input, and it gives me this capacity to understand an infinite number of Hindi sentences. It's an amazing thing,
So,
actually, if one thinks about it.
so can it be a fair assessment when I say that we are pre-programmed to learn language, like we are
Yeah,
pre-programmed to
right.
grow physically?
That's right.
Can
You
that be
are
the case?
programmed to have arms, for instance, or legs. You have legs and arms. You can't do anything about it. You can't say that I don't wish to have arms. You will have arms in any case. You will have a nose and ears and eyes. You're going to have them, except for extreme pathological cases. But in the same way, you will speak a language as long as you are exposed to it. We also know that sign language is developed by deaf children. So if two, three deaf children meet each other, and obviously they can't pick up language because they can't hear, right? So, but the point is that when the children meet each other, or if these three, four children are deaf, then they actually can develop a very complex sign language whose properties are very similar, or indeed actually the same as the standard symbols, symbolic language that we use.
And can this also be applied to different languages which are not languages per se? For example, music. Is music a language then? Because
Some
there is
people
a propensity
claim
to.
it. Yeah, that's right. I know some people do claim this thing that music is a language. But it's now the claim it could be defended by saying that look, different areas of the world have different kinds of music. Just like Germans speak German and French speak people speak French, in the same way they have different kinds of music. I mean, we can just make that claim. So I cannot when somebody plays Vietnamese music to me, I may not understand it at all. I don't know what is going on there. So in the same way, when someone speaks Vietnamese to me, I don't understand it at all because I've never been exposed to it. So you can say that the music is just like language. Different people have different kinds of music. Yeah, but it doesn't sound like that. It just seems that well, certain structures in music appear to suggest that they have a similar underlying basis. So, just like language has certain structures which are generated by the mind, music has certain structures which are generated by the mind. So, it is possible that the same mechanisms are being used to produce music and language, but I wouldn't say that music and language are the same thing. It just, I mean, all, or some people say music, language, and mathematics all come from the same basis. And some people, so basically, there is a general mechanism in the mind that produces all three. And the Chomskyan claim is that language is the original one. That's the original endowment of the human mind. And music and mathematics are like, well, they essentially uh, take that ability and use it for their own purposes. But it's not meant for music and mathematics. It's actually just meant for language. That specific endowment. So it's very difficult to, I suppose, have an experiment which would make a distinction between these two positions. It's not that easy actually. So I will. I mean, I have never heard of an experiment that makes a distinction between these positions. So the arguments are largely a priori by nature, or they are based on general observations. So, but largely speaking, these are a priori arguments. So I personally tend to be skeptical of the idea. This is my personal opinion only that music and language they may have the same base for all I know, but calling them the same is I'm not very sure whether it is the right thing to do. But I'll have to study it more. If it indeed has the same base, then well, we have a lot of explaining to do regarding certain properties of language, which are there in language, but they may not be there in music. So we will have to figure out where those properties come from. So that's an interesting problem for anybody who thinks that language and music are the same thing, because while abstractly they may seem the same, uh, language obviously has certain properties that music may not have. And so, for instance, meaning
For
is there in
example,
language. Every sentence has a
what
meaning.
are these? What are these
Let's say, for
properties that
instance, whether
language has in
music
music?
does not have any sentences, right? There are no sentences
Right.
in music. So I'm not very sure whether music has the property of discrete infinity. So language comes in. There are no one and a half words in language, right? So either there is one word and two words and 3 words or 4 words. It's not like 1.5 words are not there. Music is a little bit different. So it appears to me that there is. I'm not very sure whether music has discrete infinity to it as a property. So when you can, for instance, if somebody is whistling a tune, well, they can whistle it slowly, faster. They can really draw out the note a great deal, and so on and so forth. So these are interesting. Maybe that's still not a violation of discrete infinity, but it's not very clear to me whether discrete infinity is a part of music. It's possible it is,
But
but
again,
that.
they are concerned with an aspect of language that is phonology, right? That is sound.
Hmm. Hmm.
If I'm whistling a tone, I'm producing some sort of sound. And
Yeah,
to
that's
know
right.
what does the sound mean could also possibly be a study of phonology, right?
Yeah, I guess when then we have to just check with phonologists as to what they think about the relationship the sounds of a language have with just the musical sound. Musical sound doesn't seem to have any meaning, though they do express emotions. So, and there is a
Right.
huge debate in philosophy as to how they are able to express emotions. It's just unclear how they are able to do this job. But that depends on what kind of music we are speaking about. So, if you are listening to a violin and it is, we sometimes we may feel very sad when a particular kind of violin is tune is being played. So, why do we feel sad? Why do we feel sad? So if somebody says sentences which are very sad in their import, I don't necessarily have to feel sad about it. So what a musical piece can make me feel sad, but those are pragmatic issues. So this issue is interesting whether music and language is the same thing, but I still hold that even if they have the same base, and that also is questionable, I have a feeling that maybe they are distinct from each other. It's quite possible that
How do
musical
they have a
ability.
same base, by the way?
Oh, the same base. People are well. Language is what Chomsky's idea is that language uses the mechanism of what is called merge. So merge just means that you, let's say, very roughly, what it means is that you take two words and put them together. So you can say John, you take the word John and you take the word runs, assuming John is a word, and you put them together. Or you take the words the man is walking. These are four different words. So you take the and you take man and is and walking and you put them together. This is very roughly speaking, this is what is going on in merge. So human beings have this specific ability that we can keep on merging one element with another element. But that also happens in music, right? So there is a note, and then there's another note, and there's another note, and you can keep doing it. So, in that sense, music also appears to employ merge. So, these are interesting issues as to whether the same base is being employed or not. But it does need strong investigation.
Right. Okay. I don't know enough about it, so I'll just move on to another thing you mentioned when you were talking about language acquisition, and you talked about that how only the ability to acquire language, which is an
Mhm.
innate capacity of the human being, remains till the age of 12. That is what the linguist argues, right? Don't you think this also acts as a limitation for the language acquisition theory too? Because uh, can we say after the age of 12, the idea or the propensity to acquire language stops, right? So there is no development in the knowledge of language. So all you have is a 12-year base, and you are now working or formulating ideas on that 12 years of base. And if that is the case, then how is it possible that people also learn languages uh, after reaching 13, 14, 15, 16, right, when they're not 12 anymore? Is it a very clear distinction that way, that you cannot even learn anything, a piece of language, after you turn 13, after you turn 14, after you turn 15? Is
Well,
that so?
it's very obvious that people do learn languages. So, but that learning is very distinct from the way a child learns a language. So, if I have to learn a language after the age of 12, I have to put in some effort, right? So, people learn different languages at school, let's say German or Sanskrit, or whatever. So, you put in a lot of effort essentially. So you pass exams and whatever. But a child doesn't do all this at all. A child has no interest in learning a language. He's just playing around
Right.
doing
So,
something. He just picks up the language. So there's
so
a
minimal
huge difference
effort
in the way
with
child learns. and the way somebody who's above 12 would learn a language. So that's what is called second language acquisition, and that's studied very deeply. But first language acquisition is something completely different. It's a different cup of tea altogether.
Okay, so there is minimal effort plus there is minimal awareness. That is what you're
It's
saying.
true. Yeah, child is not like trying to learn a language.
Got it. So, also, what does language acquisition tell us about the inception of language? Is this how we primarily learned language when we became humans? Because, or did it begin with a thing that we collectively associated a few things with a few words and a few objects with a few meanings, and that is how we learned in the process? Or was it innate from the very beginning that we are humans now? We are genetically coded to learn language. We are pre programmed in that manner. And hence, we learn language first here in the mind, and then we externalize the language. Is it a right way to put it?
Well, I think what you're asking is, has language evolved from something more primitive? So maybe
Yes.
the idea might be that I think Richard Dawkins says this, that nature has again and again developed the eye. So what you need for an eye is essentially a photoreceptor. So once you have a photoreceptor, then slowly over generations and generations and generations, maybe like 200, 500 generations, you develop a full scale eye. So maybe the idea of language would be that maybe there is one word, and then after some generations, like 25 words. Then after another few generations, 500 generations, you have 40,000 words or something like that. But we don't have any evidence for this kind of view. So it appears as if the moment humans appeared, language is there in full blown capacity. It's just like human beings have arms and legs, language is also there in full blown capacity. We don't appear to have evidence of linguistically endowed species before human beings. It is not like pre hominids spoke some language. They may, of course, that does not mean that they are unable to communicate with each other. We use gestures and calls. Every single animal in a forest uses gestures and calls and whatever. We use a lot of gestures, of course. Animals are much more limited, I guess, but they definitely use calls. And so, but we are not using calls. A sentence is not a call or anything. So when I say fire, yeah, that all right. That kind of call can be given by an animal, but the animal can't think that the fire is going down and we are no more in danger. I can say that to you and I can call you and say that to you. Or for instance, just a few days, just 2 days back, I think I received a message on my phone which says that there is a possible situation of flood in Delhi. So please do this and this and this such that you are safe from the flood. Okay, so but if you say this kind of message can't be delivered by one animal to another. So human beings just come endowed with this capacity. We don't appear to have evidence of. We have evidence of fairly complex activity of hominids before full-blown human beings emerge. But that whether that complex activity has also attached with it the full-blown capacity for language, that's very unclear. It appears that only human beings have this capacity. So once we just emerged, that's it. We just had that biologically endowed capacity with us. It sounds like magic, but we don't have any evidence to suggest otherwise. But it's good to look for other evidence. But even
Do
the
we have
anthropologist,
evidence to?
so there's
Hmm.
an anthropologist by the name of Ian Tattersall, and he also believes the same thing, that it appears that there was some kind of remarkable mutation that took place, such that we were endowed with this capacity for language. There is just no evidence beyond human beings, before human beings, that there was any species that spoke any language, including the hominids that preceded us.
Do we have scientific evidence that suggests that we are biologically endowed to learn language, or we are pre-programmed to learn language, other than there is no other species that could learn language other than us? Is there any other evidence that supports this argument?
Well, people have tried to, many scientists have tried this. So they have tried to make a chimpanzee, say, learn a language. So you can take a small baby chimpanzee and you can, make it grow up with human beings, and you can teach it language, you teach it how to communicate, things like that. So I think they have been trying this with an ape for 40 years or so. So that ape's called Nim Chinsky actually. So they have tried for many years to teach it a language, but nothing has ever come out. The ape only understands about 40 words. So it appears as if other species don't have this capacity, but human beings, of course, you don't take 40 years to learn 40 words. You just do it in, your ability. Right now, for instance, you probably know something like 200,000 words of the language that you grew up with. So, which is a huge capacity. That's astonishing if you think about it. So, it's just an odd sort of capacity we possess. It's not there in any other species. Of course, we have not looked at every species. So many species have disappeared. So, how would we know that was there any other species who spoke a language? But there appears to be no evidence to suggest that there were such species, and there also seems to be nothing in the fossil record that would suggest anything like this. So it seems that human beings are the first thinking creatures who use a language. Many creatures think. It's not like creatures don't think anything. Uh, chimpanzees are chimpanzees, bonobos, whatever. You take any animal you want, they are capable of complex intentions, complex behavior. So it's not like animals are not capable of anything. Of course they are, but they do not have the capacity to understand this kind of. They don't have this abstract capacity in them to understand a sentence, the put it in a particular syntax, to recognize that something is ungrammatical, and so on and so forth. These capacities are simply not possessed by any other species.
So the assertion or the affirmative stance of linguistic acquisition comes in relation to other species, at least for now.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, when somebody is pushed to the wall and say that no, no. I mean, what is your evidence? Then obviously they will have to say that look, people have tried teaching it to chimpanzees. Nothing has ever come of it. So, or you can try teach it to. I mean, you can try teaching it to a dog or a kitten or something. I mean, nothing is ever going to come of it. So many dogs grow up with families, right? So and dogs are very loving creatures, and we speak to the dogs all the time. That doesn't mean that the dog understands very complicated sentences. So
Right,
it can understand
right.
simple things like sit or come here or something like that.
So when we talk about language acquisition, and this is an interesting thought, at least in my head, right? And that is, we know that there is minimal input required, which creates an abundance rich output, and that is what we are studying. That how is this primarily happening, right? But let's say there is a biological endowment for the child to learn, or he's pre-programmed to learn the language. But let's say there is no stimulating environment present, which is like there is no input at all. Will the child still learn the language? Is he still pre-programmed to learn language from zero input? Can that happen?
Well, it could learn a language if it came to interact with people, but if it does not interact, and probably for the first 12 years there is no interaction with anybody, then the chances of its learning a language are almost like minimal. There
So
is a case
stimulating
like this.
environment has a role to play.
Oh yeah, environment does certainly has a role to play. It after all it provides the input for you learning Hindi, for instance. You can't just learn Hindi by just lying around and not hearing Hindi at all. That's just not possible. So there has to be some Hindi input that comes in, such that the language that is generated by the child is what we call Hindi. So some input is necessary. On the only issue is that the input is very poor, but the output is very rich. What the philosopher Quine calls meager input and torrential output. So the output is torrential, but the input is meager. And so what we have to figure out is how is this very peculiar thing happening? How is it possible for the output to be torrential and the input to be meager? So nobody is saying the environment has no role to play. Of course, the environment has a role to play in your developing arms and eyes and legs and whatever. So if you are, I mean, one experiment which people often cite, and Chomsky also cites, is of Hubel and Weissel, who they had experimented with a kitten, and they had ensured that a small kitten is unable to see anything for about 6 months because they had tied up its eyes. And so they opened the eyes after 6 months, and the kitten was blind. That clearly suggests that light is necessary to fall on a kitten's eyes for its retina to function and all kinds of things to happen, and such that the kitten is able to see. But in the same way, if a child is like a Robinson Crusoe on an island, he's never gonna pick up a language because there is just no input at all. So nobody is saying the environment has no role to play. Of course, it has a role to play, but the point is that the role is very minimal.
I initially thought that the Chomsky school, right, if I could call it that, the Chomsky school, right, it deals or it dismisses the requirement or the presence of an environment in learning of a language. Because Chomsky stands in critique to Skinner, if I'm not mistaken. So I thought, whereas Skinner emphasizes a lot on behavior and sociology, on culture, community, Chomsky, on the other hand, says that this is not how it happens. But you're saying ki this is not how it primarily happens, but it has some minimal role to play as well. We
Of course,
cannot
there is a role to play.
completely discard it.
Yeah, you can't
Right? Okay.
discard the environment. I think Skinner's view is that it is just the environment that really matters. Nothing else is there except the environment. But Chomsky's view
Right.
is that, of course, the environment is there. Nobody is ever going to deny that. But there is a lot else going on beyond the environment. We are not merely stimulus response creatures. So
So
maybe Skinner's view is that rats and humans are the same. They're just like stimulus response creatures, both of them. But humans appear not to be stimulus response creatures.
so we can say that language is not acquired through a didactic process alone, or through an automated process alone. Rather, both. It is also
That
didactic,
is
that you
true.
learn from
Yes.
the environment, and it's also automated.
Yes,
Right.
I would
But
call
then,
it
but
didactic, but I would say that some environmental input is obviously necessary. But no teaching is needed. At least a child doesn't need to be taught anything. The child simply learns the language. I would need to be taught French, obviously, because I don't know French or Manipuri or whatever. I have no idea about French, and maybe
but if you
I
were
will find it very hard to learn.
But if you were in an environment if you were in an environment since a childhood which
Yes,
had
if I was
French
six
around,
months
you
old,
could have
yeah,
learned French on your own. You did not
yes,
have to be
absolutely,
taught. Right.
that's right. Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. So the another question is, and this question concerns artificial intelligence, right? I do not know how stupid or naive this question is, but I was trying to employ the same theory that Chomsky gives in the arena of artificial intelligence, and that is, um, we talk about the idea of biological endowment, right? In case to learn a language, but when we talk about AI has no biology, right? Like we do. So therefore, we cannot suppose or even scientifically prove that there is a biological endowment in their case. So
Mhm.
they learn language primarily through the large databases that have been fed onto them or into them, right? That is true. Then how is the case that we and they learn language differently, but the idea of language that Chomsky propounds has a very specific meaning, that language could only be learned through this, and that is why no other species around is able to acquire that, because they're not genetically coded to learn language. But AI, on the other hand, is not genetically coded as far as we could tell, right? And the more or less we learn about AI, we get it that AI is learning primarily more or less things from the stimulating environment it is in. So it is only because we feed something into AI and then it responds. We do not know if there is again a caveat to this, which is we do not know if we only give 10% of input into AI and the AI replies back with 100% input. We do not know that yet. Or maybe we could just clearly say that AI is uh, working on an equal basis, that we give 10%, it gives back 10%. So it's completely plagiarizing. It cannot create, therefore. And then another question would be, how does then Chomsky or somebody like Chomsky would define or explain creativity in human context? If he says that everything is structurally coded or genetically coded, then how come we can ever be creative in that sense? Do you get my question? Am I making
Yeah,
sense?
I get the question. Yeah, no doubt about that. Yeah. So, yeah, the second question first is, so how does Chomsky talk about creativity? So, well, he says that look, we can't explain creative use of language. That we cannot explain. How would we? We have no clue how that is happening. Nobody has any clue in the world how that is happening. So, what we can do is give some explanation of what is the syntax of a language. How does a person understand an infinite number of sentences of a language and generate the meaning of the language, meaning of those sentences? We can understand the mechanism that is employed to put together sentences such that we can speak them creatively. according to the context and freedom from free from stimuli, etc. Okay, so it's we are not trying to explain creative use of language. Linguists are not trying to do that. Nobody can explain creative use of language because we just don't know what is happening. So freedom is a problem. Every philosopher knows this. That how are we supposed to have freedom in a universe which is completely governed by laws? It just doesn't seem, it doesn't need to make any sense. So linguists are not saying we are trying to make sense of how do we what explains creative use of language. No, we can't explain it. Nobody can explain creative use of language. What we can explain is why is the sentence or what mechanisms are used to explain the difference between the sentence, two sentences. John likes him and John likes himself. Why is it that in one sentence it means that John doesn't like himself, and the other sentence it means that John likes himself? So it's something like that. It's just we are trying to explain these differences. We are not trying to explain creative use of language. So that's just we nobody can explain creativity. It's like trying to explain why did Da Vinci paint Mona Lisa the way he did. Well, that nobody can explain. We have no clue why he did it. So coming to AI, now Chomsky has various opinions about this, and over the years he has retained a certain consistent position on this issue. Some what you said was that AI is learning a language. So well, Chomsky would say not really. For instance, he will say, look, uh, children learn a language. Machines don't learn a language. If you say AI is learning a language, that is a metaphorical way of speaking. It's like saying that submarines swim, but or rather fish swim, and submarines also swim. Submarines don't swim, just like aeroplanes don't fly, birds fly, but we say aeroplanes fly. But here we speak metaphorically. So in the same way, we often discuss this issue of whether machines think or not. Well, according to Chomsky, human beings think. You can say machines think or they don't think or whatever. This is a metaphorical extension of the literal use of language. So if you say AI is learning a language, well, the AI is not learning anything. It's not doing anything of the sort. Human beings learn a language. The phrase "learning a language" is employed literally for human beings, metaphorically for AI. Since it's a metaphorical usage of the notion of learning a language, it's completely distinct from human learning. Therefore, these two cases cannot be compared with each other. There is no such thing as learning a language going on by AI. AI is essentially using some kind of predictive apparatus to, let's say, if I say John is going to, okay, the AI will now predict something. It will say, okay, market or mall or whatever, something to meet his mother or something like that. So it will generate what is the best next phrase that follows John is going to meet who. So it will be like the next best phrase will come from the vast corpus of data it has. But a human child is completely distinct from AI. It doesn't use a vast corpus of data at all. It actually uses very little data. So when AI learns a language, it's like a very dull kind of activity. It is looking at a vast corpus of sentences, and in it tries to make predictions and given a certain input. So a human being doesn't do anything like this at all. A human being does not have a vast corpus of sentences to access to learn the language. Otherwise, you can just give me a big dictionary of French, put it in my head. I would still never speak French because I just don't know the language. I have a huge dictionary in my head, and it's not going to help me in any way in learning speaking French. But an AI, if you give it that, it has a predictive apparatus with it. So it looks at the dictionary, it looks at all the sentences. You give me all the sentences of French, I would still not be able to make anything out of it. But an AI has a predictive apparatus in it that does that job. So the AI is not learning a language, nor does it speak a language. Human beings learn a language and speak a language. And we metaphorically say that AI uses a language. This is Chomsky's position, I think. And I have a feeling that this, not only a feeling, but I think he's actually right. There is a lot of nonsense about AI, but there's really nothing. So far as language learning is concerned, it is completely misplaced. Maybe other places it's fine to say AI is doing this or that or whatever, but it's not right to say AI is thinking. That just sounds very strange to me because it's just a machine. It
Or
just does something.
A thing you said about the French language, right? If I give you a dictionary, you could still read up, mug it up, but you cannot comprehend or understand what it says because you not know what the language means. Do you think it is very similar in the case of AI? Because I'll try to formulate it accordingly, right? There is a syntax that we feed into AI, right? There is a structure, there is a grammar we feed into AI, right?
Hmm.
But AI, what it doesn't understand is the semantics of it, of the syntax.
Yeah, that's
So if
right.
I tell AI I like cats, AI would not get what does it mean to like cats, but it could still replicate or
Yeah, that's right.
generate further more responses based on the predictive nature you
Yeah,
said, the
that's
predictability of AI, right? But that is not the case with humans. The moment we get a syntax in our head, a structure, we try to associate a meaning with it, right? So once there is syntax, please correct me if I'm wrong, then there is also semantics for that syntax. So
yeah,
if
right.
something goes inside my head, there's a meaning associated with that thing, and AI fails to do it. Am I making sense when I say this?
Yeah, that's the standard complaint people make about AI, that it doesn't simply understand meanings. Human beings
Right?
are
And
able to understand meanings.
even if I go on giving more, even if I go on with the intent of giving semantics to AI, that would again become syntax in that way because it
Oh
cannot in
yeah,
the
that's
very
true.
first
Yes,
place.
that's right. That's actually very well said.
Right. Okay.
Very well
Okay.
said,
I see.
because Chomsky does believe that syntax feeds into semantics. So syntax and semantics are not entirely independent of each other. It feeds into semantics. So therefore, if we are giving syntax to an AI, whatever that syntax may be, it's not feeding any semantics into the AI. The AI just simply doesn't know the meaning of any of the sentences it is dealing with. I'm not sure whether the AI even knows that it types out answers in English. It it just doesn't know that it speaks English, for instance, or it types out answers in English. I don't think Alexa knows it speaks English. Yeah, for all I know, if you fed the information that she comes out with sentences in English, but you tell her that no, this is Romanian, then she will say, no, yeah, that is Romanian. Alexa has no clue what is going on. There is just a kind of program that is doing something or the other. It just does not have whatever this thing is, what is called meaning. Now, this is a very big issue as to what is meaning, and we are nowhere close to answering this issue. But we know one thing, that machines are much farther than us in coming up with a solution to that question. They have not even started addressing the issue. At least we address the issue, and there are many books on it. The machines are nowhere in the picture so far as addressing that issue is concerned.
So one could rightly conclude, or maybe a conclusion would be a stupid deal to do here, right? But one could rightly say on the ideas given by Chomsky that AI possibly cannot be conscious or cannot think. And that answers the famous Alan Turing question, can machine think? Because you rightly said that machine cannot. They can do things, but they cannot think, right?
Yeah, I mean, Chomsky actually quotes Turing on this. So he says that Turing says very clearly that it would be too much to expect to answer the question, can machines think? Because in what sense are we asking this question at all? Human beings think, machines don't think anything. I mean, we can make a machine that mimics some things that human beings do while we think, but that doesn't mean that the machine is thinking anything. So even if the machine can do very complicated jobs, even then it is said that they are not thinking anything. It's like I am not running a program when I'm speaking to you, but a machine runs a program. But I am apparently, that's because I am speaking to you creatively. Even when the machine does it, the machine doesn't do creative. Machine doesn't use creative. It does not have a creative use of language. It is persistently looking back at its program, and because it's a very powerful machine, it can calculate millions. It can make millions of calculations in 1 second. It comes out with some output that you think is an intelligent answer to your question, but it is not an intelligent answer. I don't think the machine even understands what you're asking. It is going by an incredibly powerful algorithm. So if you ask the machine, explain to me Chomsky's theory of language, the chat GPT will give you an excellent answer to that. It will pick up all kinds of information from millions of sources, put it together in a very nice way, and just give it to you. That doesn't mean that chat GPT actually understands that question. It is simply it's an extremely powerful machine that uses vast amounts of data to generate a sensible answer to what appears to you to be a sensible answer to a question. But they are just appearances and nothing else. There is no reality behind it. The only reality is one that is something that we can't do anything about. That is that I don't run a program while speaking to you, but a machine runs a program to speak to you. You take the program out, the machine is dead.
What are these programs are you talking about? Are these computational processes that goes inside AI? Are you talking about that?
Yeah, that's right. It has ways of looking at all this corpus of data. It has been given
They even
various.
do that, right? We have
If it
mental processes all the
trials are
time.
conducted, so far as I know, trials are conducted on machines. So if, let's say, you ask the question, what is linguistics? The machine gives an answer. Let's say the answer is wrong. It actually picked it up from some source which is not the right source. So then you tell the machine, you feed some information to the machines saying this is a wrong answer. You cannot give this answer, and so then the machine corrects itself. So it's a kind of self. It is not a self-correcting mechanism, but somebody has to correct it, saying that look, this is not the right answer. So if you keep on telling a machine that 2 plus 2 is 5 and it is not 4, then it will just say it is 5. It it corrects itself according to the information that it gets. So some corrective mechanism is necessary.
But then, how is it different from? I mean, it might be, but I'll still take the risk of asking this question. How is it different from us? Because sometimes we say something and we say it on the basis of the sources or the data we have inside our head, and there is subsequently mental processes going inside our heads as well, right? And when we say something, we say it wrong. We do not know it until somebody corrects us. Because if I say, let's say that Chomsky was a behaviorist and I have never read Chomsky, then somebody like you would come and say, oh no, Chomsky was not a behaviorist, rather he critiqued the behaviorist. And then I stand corrected, right? And this is
Yeah.
what AI is doing to, more or less, right? Because then the question comes, if this debate is solved, then why is there so much noise? And I know we are digressing from the topic, but then why is there so much noise in the field of AI, right? We see videos, papers coming up every day. Can AI think, right? How destructive is AI? Well, that is a different thing, the destruction part. But can it think? Can it become conscious? Can it develop cognition? Well, if we go by this logic, the logic that we are applying right now, then these questions are futile, right? More or less.
When you say that, if you say that Chomsky is a behaviorist, and I say no, well, you can
Hmm.
always say you are wrong, and I have here is all the evidence I have to believe that Chomsky is a behaviorist. So then I will backtrack and I will say, no, 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 you are not right, and I will give you lots of evidence. But you may not believe me. You will say, look, I am ready to believe my evidence. You can believe whatever evidence you want, but I also have evidence. AI machines don't do that. AI machines don't say, suppose you write to an AI machine saying that this specific thing that you've told me about linguistics is completely wrong and your information is wrong. AI doesn't say, the AI doesn't fight with you. It has no clue what it is talking about. A human being is able to get back. This is something that Descartes said, that even the most illiterate person can speak to you intelligently in a specific language that you understand. So, but a machine can't do this. And so, the illiterate man can also fight with you on political issues, because the illiterate man sometimes can have an ear to the ground that I don't have. And so many people who are, pollsters and whatever, they go to common people and ask them, like, because they don't know what's actually happening on the ground. And we are often we stand corrected often by what when we say something to people, they don't necessarily follow us. Human beings are very odd in that sense. We are not stimulus response creatures, but an AI machine is like a stimulus response creature. You just, if it says something, you say this is wrong, it just accepts it, that's it. It's not going to fight back. Even if it has to fight back, you can train it to do so, but then that would produce all kinds of odd results. So let us say I tell the AI machine that no, 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 2 plus 2 is 5. Well, you have to train the AI machine to say no, no, you are wrong. 2 plus 2 is actually 4. So, but you have to train the machine to say so. But and once you train it, the machine will keep doing that thing if it is challenged. For everything, it will do that thing. So that's going to make, for a human being, that's not the case. You may or may not challenge me. You may accept my and AI is what I would describe as something that's not responsive to reasons. It just responds to stimuli. It is not responsive to reasons of any kind. You can keep giving whatever reasons you want. The AI does not respond to reasons. It responds to stimuli. If stimulus is negative, I give a negative response to the AI. Saying, no, I don't think that what your information is just wrong. The AI will just say, okay, I will go back and correct myself. So, but human beings are not like that. You can fight your case. You can say, "No, I'm sorry. You are completely wrong." And I think Chomsky is an externalist and a behaviorist, and he does not think syntax is primary and whatever. People have had all kinds of strange notions about Chomsky. So, I once read a philosophy book in which said that Chomsky says that language is meant for communication, but Chomsky has never said this anywhere. So people do say these things. So and they can present evidence too. I mean, they just give some quotation from somewhere or whatever. So it's just Chomsky also says certain things that are, I don't think are actually there in philosophical discourse. I don't. I think maybe he's misunderstanding Frege to some extent. But anyway, the idea is we can always fight back with all kinds of evidence. AI machines don't do that. They are only stimulus response machines. We are not like that.
But then you also say that we can train them to fight back, and eventually they might
Yes, we can
imitate
train
us on
them.
this thing as well, right? We
No,
are
I
saying
think
humans can think for themselves, but AI cannot think for themselves. They respond to stimuli.
they
We
respond to
have,
stimulus. They
right,
respond.
yes, and we have the propensity to respond to reason, right, or anything, or to believe, or to faith, and we can fight for it. But AI cannot. But
Suppose
do you feel it
you're,
interesting? Yeah, please
suppose
go
you're
on.
brought up in a community which has taught you to always obey everyone. Always, it doesn't matter what it is. Or you obey any order that is given to you. You may still disobey some order, but an AI machine will never do that. So a teacher may tell
Maybe.
you 100 times that please attend class, or 100% attendance is necessary. And you vice chancellors will tell you 100% attendance is necessary. But a student need not attend. The student will say, I'm sorry, I don't want to attend classes.
But do you again think, very interestingly, this is the case of biological endowment, because biologically we all seek comfort. Anything that is against our comfort, we try to rebel against it. That could
Well,
be the
not
case, and we
necessarily
could
true.
never do
We
it.
often go through long years of education, even though that is quite uncomfortable thing to do. It would be very nice. Let's say if I was, let's say that why should I be in academics and wasting my time reading books and whatever? I mean, you can do some easier job maybe somewhere else. But I'm not looking for comfort, right? Or maybe I find this more comfortable than something else. And all kinds of arguments can be made. But the issue is we are not looking here for comfort. The comfort issue is completely orthogonal to this whole issue. The idea is AI machines simply don't have this kind of ability that human beings possess. We do not understand why human beings possess this ability. Now, this non-understanding issue is actually given by Jeffrey Hinton also. He says that, look, I have trained certain robots, and here are they are playing football with each other. And why did the robot make this pass and not that pass? Well, we can't explain that. There is a program in it, it is just doing something. So, what it is doing, I cannot figure out by re-engineering the program to figure out why he hit the ball left rather than right. Yeah, okay, that's an interesting argument, but I'm not very sure what this actually shows. It's not very clear to me what the end result of this argument is. According to Jeffrey Hinton, robots think, and they, as of now, that they are thinking, and indeed they are also conscious and aware. Now, he uses these words in very odd ways that I'm not fully. I don't. Philosophers don't are very careful in using these words. But I mean, Hinton is also very careful. It's not like he's not careful. He's quite careful about his use of words. And so, but he's quite careless when he comes to these issues of he's saying that no, AI is already thinking and it is already conscious and it is already aware and whatever. It's not clear to me what all this means. I'm not very sure what is going on here. Why is he this confident? I think his only confidence is that the reason why he's confident is that I am unable to re-engineer what the AI did. And therefore, I think that what the AI did, since it is inexplicable, therefore he is thinking. But this is not the argument regarding human beings. I'm not saying you are a thinking person because it is inexplicable what makes you think. That's not my argument. Hinton's argument for AI, I have heard only his BBC interview, so I have not read him. But that's what he says. He says, I'm not sure what is happening in the AI's program. Yes, there is a program. What the AI is doing with the program to play football in a particular way, that's just, I just don't know what is happening. If I re-engineer the entire program, I will never be able to find out why the AI did what it did. But this doesn't seem to establish that the AI is thinking. It's the argument is it is inexplicable what the AI did, therefore it is thinking. But the argument for human beings is not it is inexplicable what human beings do, therefore human beings are thinking. And the word think just is applied to human beings. So I think the real problem with AI is that we don't have any non-metaphorical vocabulary for them. Our literal vocabulary is what is there. So I say you think, I think, whatever. But when I use this word for AI or a refrigerator or anything for that matter, when I use these words for, if I say a refrigerator thinks, you will say, oh, no, that's stupid. Of course, a refrigerator doesn't think. So I can tell you why the refrigerator, without my making any effort, it is keeping everything cool. It works on its own. It has a thermostat and it will switch off. It is really working in a very nice, disciplined way. What makes you think it is not thinking? So, you will give all kinds of arguments for it. But ultimately, it seems to me that we need maybe new vocabulary to deal with AI. AI is actually caught in this peculiar anthropocentric kind of language. So maybe a very different vocabulary is needed. After all, I admit that what AI does is way better than what we do. There is no doubt about it. So maybe I think I've just heard somewhere that an AI machine was able to solve a very complex mathematical problem, which many great mathematicians have not been able to solve for 10 years. The AI machine solved it in 10 minutes. But that does not mean that the AI machine knows mathematics. It is able to do vast number of calculations and
But
arrive at a
Professor, don't you think you're saying AI doesn't know mathematics, but it was able to solve the most complex
yes.
mathematical problem?
When we say able to solve, we mean metaphorically able to solve. Human
Right.
beings are
Okay.
able to solve theorems and problems and whatever. AI doesn't solve anything. When the solution emerges, AI does not have any eureka moment. Nothing. It's just done the thing. It just gives it out. A printout is given to you. That's all finished. That's it. AI doesn't know it has proved anything. We train it to do some certain things, but it is able to crunch data which we are just unable to do. Deep Blue can think, not think, but it can calculate 1 billion moves per second. But Gary Kasparov can't calculate 1 billion moves per second. It just can't do that. It's just not possible. I was just reading recently a book on economics. In that, it is mentioned that Herbert Simon, who was like a polymath of some sort, and so he has a Nobel Prize in economics. So he actually said that look, life is very uncertain, right? So many uncertain things are. I cannot keep all variables in mind. So when I'm taking a walk at night, millions of buses are passing me by, scooters are passing me by. There are so many variables involved in my walking. So how do I solve these variables? What do I do is that I try to reduce the uncertainty of life as much as possible by walking on the footpath. I don't use the main road to walk. So if I use the main road to walk, I will be really very tense because the uncertainty, the information flow is huge, and I just don't know what to do with that information flow. So I walk on the footpath, assuming that cars and buses will not come and strike me there. So it seems that that's not necessarily a safe assumption, but it is an assumption that it appears that that is I will be safe when I walk on the footpath. Not necessarily 100%, but well, 98% I am safe. So that's the way human beings behave. When Gary Kasparov moves a piece on a chessboard, he doesn't think 1 billion moves. He can't do it. It's just not possible. And if he thought that, maybe he would not be able to make any move. So what Gary Kasparov is probably thinking is What's the safest move to make? What is it such that I will not be blasted out in 1 second by my opponent? What's the move such that it doesn't look really stupid to my opponent? And so what he will do is he has certain heuristics. So what he will do is he will say, look, just like I walk on the footpath, Gary Kasparov will say, I will make a really safe move, such that it may not necessarily be very damaging to my opponent, but it will make sure that my opponent doesn't easily attack me. So I make some safe move and then I will see what he's going to think. So that is what he's going to do. He will play for safety, but he can't keep 1 million uncertain things in his mind. That's just not something he can do, but a computer can do that. So the computer doesn't know it is proving anything. It's just given, it is just told, look, do this. Okay, it just looks at vast number of computations, it does that, and it gives you a proof. What we call proving something. But the computer is proving nothing. It doesn't know what a proof is. It has no clue what it is. I am not saying we are clearer about what a proof is. We are not clearer what a proof is, but we prove things. Computers prove nothing. It appears to us as if they do. Human beings are very indiscriminate attributors of intention. I mean, you think about primitive human beings, we attribute intentions to stones, the sky, we say gods are living in the sky. I guess our reactions to AI machines are like that. We tend to attribute too much intention to them. It's a kind of mythology of some kind.
It is very similar to saying that the lion is the king of the jungle, but we do not know if the lion thinks that way,
Of
right?
course not.
If lion
Yeah,
is
lion is
already
definitely
right,
not the king of the jungle.
right,
Neither the
precisely, but
lion
we,
doesn't know it itself.
right, yes, yes.
I think this is kind of
Well,
mythology that is very common, but it is quite common for human beings to have mythologies about objects. It's very common, you know. Well, so in India, you walk somewhere, there is a tree, and there will be a small statue there, and a garland will be there, something like. It's really the same thing with AI. It's not anything different. We just look upon these machines as doing something so great that we cannot ever figure out what they are doing. They are much better than us in many ways. To some extent, that is true actually. I can't do a printer's work. A printer does something amazing, frankly speaking. A computer does something amazing. This program that you're running, that's something amazing. I can't do that. No human being can do this. It is doing something that we just can't do. So, just ordinarily, we can't do these things. So, when we see these astonishing abilities in a machine, we ascribe remarkable intentions to them. This is very common for all human beings to do. So, it is just a type of when we see a thunderbolt falling from the sky, and it damages things and it burns crops and it kills human beings. So we say, oh, maybe the sky is some kind of god that is very angry. In the same way, when we see a machine solving a problem, we think that this is some great capacity this machine has and some intelligence is there in it. It's not like that. It's really a form of mythology of some kind, I think. It's a kind of new mythology that is there.
right, it's the modern mythology. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
in a sense, that's what it is. Yeah.
Right. Coming back. I mean, leaving this apart now because we have talked not enough, but we have talked about AI at a good length. I had two more questions regarding the topics we are talking about. Right. When you read Chomsky or you read anything concerning Chomsky, you come across two terms that are very often used. So one is universal grammar and the other is generative grammar. Right. And I happen to know these are not the same things. And I want to know what is the difference between the two.
Okay, what I understand by universal grammar is that it is the name of the mechanism that allows you to produce an infinite number of sentences and understand them. So it's the name of that mechanism. So you can say universal grammar can exist without any language because it's the original endowment you possess, right? It's the original endowment that you possess, and when language some input comes, you produce the language. So that's universal grammar. It's the name of the original endowment you possess. So let's say no language has been heard by you, but you have that pre-programmed endowment inside. That's universal grammar.
So this is a biological endowment that a
Yeah,
child possesses.
it's the name of the biological endowment that you possess. So that's universal grammar. Generative grammar is basically it's the idea is that when we develop a theory of universal grammar, What we do is that we try to give a structure to every sentence that a human being can produce over an infinite range. And so, if we are able to have tools such that we give a structure to every sentence that we can think of, and we can, you give any sentence of a language, the linguist gives a structure to it. Now, this structure giving task to every single expression of a language is what is called a generative grammar. So generative grammar generates structures for every single sentence of an infinite of a language, which has, of course, an infinite range of sentences. So generative grammar is more like a theory of universal grammar. A universal grammar is the original endowment. This is what I've understood by reading Chomsky. But it is true that some people tend to confuse these two phrases with each other. Generative grammar is a
Yes.
theory of universal grammar. Universal grammar is the original endowment you have, whether anybody has a theory about it or not, that doesn't matter. So, generative grammar is a theory which gives you the structure of every sentence of the language that you have mastered.
Okay. Can again coming back to the AI thing, is it possible for AI on the large language models that they are based, right, to form or generate their own language? Is it a thing? Can Because we do not know how creativity works for them, because we do not know how it works for us as well. Can it be the case that they create more language based on the recursive language that already is there feed onto them?
It could do that, but it would not be a language that we can learn. So in a sense, it can create something that it calls a language, but we don't know why it is a language or what it is. It could even create a syntax or whatever for it, but we can't learn that language. We have a certain what might be described as a bandwidth in which we can learn languages. Just like I can't see infrared, I can't see it. So in a sense, if an AI machine, uh, if it is asked to create a language, let's say you tell ChatGPT create a language for me with the full grammar and vocabulary and syntax and semantics. Maybe the AI ChatGPT can do the job. I don't know. Maybe it can just do it. So, but that doesn't mean that the language will be learnable by us.
Hmm.
Because in
I
a
see.
basic sense, AI machines simply don't learn a language. So they are not going to produce any learnable languages in the first place. Uh, it just does something basically. It just simply give you lots of rules and whatever. But it won't do anything which is something that we do. It is not something that is completely alien to us. We know that it will be using the same information that we have given to it. And so it will simply create some language. It can do so. Machines can do many things, but that doesn't mean that it is a language. It would be maybe an artificial language like Fortran or Basic or I don't know Python or something like that. Maybe these are they are artificial languages. They are not real languages like English or Hindi or whatever.
Hmm.
English or Hindi I can learn, but if you talked Fortran or Basic or Python to a child, the child can't pick up anything. So in that sense, AI can't create a language. But yeah, in some technical sense, you can say, yeah, of course, AI has created a language. But that's not something that we can learn because nobody
So in
speaks it.
that case, is it true that mathematics is also a language? If we teach mathematics to a child, right, and then there is this concept of biological endowment. Is it possible that with minimal input, the child would produce a rich output?
Well, it depends on what we mean by math. So if we mean
Okay.
geometry and trigonometry and differential calculus, then no, that's not the case. However, we have what is called the number capacity, which is I can say one, two, three, four, and it appears as if human beings can go to infinity, right? We keep on counting and counting and counting. We don't think numbers have an end, and that is an interesting aspect. Of course, numbers are the property of discrete infinity. That property
Hmm.
it has. But there are well-formed formulas of mathematics that are not well-formed formulas of language, for instance. So if you say for all x, x plus y equal to z square or something, that's not a sentence of language, but it's a well-formed expression in mathematics. So mathematical well-formed expressions need not necessarily be formed by mechanisms that are available in the universal grammar. So it seems unclear to me that the whole of mathematics is to be called a language of any kind. It's just a very
Okay.
odd kind of thought. It doesn't seem to make
Okay.
any sense to me. But yes, the counting capacity, by the way, or the capacity to think that numbers are infinite in their range. You just keep going and going and going. It never stops anywhere. So that capacity, many people have said, is abstracted from language.
Okay.
Just like music is abstracted from language for Chomsky, mathematics is also, or arithmetic is abstracted from language.
Got it. I have one last question from the limited things I have read, from the things you shared with me, and from the things I saw on YouTube. Right. And the last question is, can there be thought or thinking without
Mhm.
language? Is it plausible?
That is a very complex question indeed.
Right.
Many people have different opinions about it. It appears as if there can be thought without language. So animals also think. I mean, chimpanzees and bonobos, and it seems dogs. They have some intentions. So their thought need
How,
not be
how do
cached.
we know? How do we know that animals think? Because we know they react, but how do we
Uh,
know they think?
they can have very complex intentions. We know these from various experiments that people have done with animals. They're not invasive experiments. We just sort of check their behavior. And from their behavior, we know that they have very complex intentions. Indeed, chimpanzees can have very complex structures in their hunting without any communication, right? It's not like they are telling another chimpanzee, look, you go and hide there, and I will chase the prey and I will bring the prey to you, then you jump on the prey. That's not how they don't plan these things out. But what is surprising is that they are able to do this. They have very complex manners of catching preys, and they will really, really do it in a way as if without any communication this is happening. So they clearly have very complex abilities. They are able to form complex intentions. So to say that they don't think is not right, but the idea is that they don't think what philosophers say propositionally. That is, they don't think in terms of sentences. Whatever their thought is something we can never understand. It is just something very strange. Some people have even claimed that we can never really understand what an animal thinks because our whole mode of thinking is linguistic. And so therefore and an animal thinks non-linguistically. Even though it is thinking, maybe it is thinking, but the point is it thinks non-linguistically. I can never understand a non-linguistic animal. We can only make these claims saying that okay, it is thinking and whatever. Yeah, but it's really difficult for us to sort of understand these non-linguistic claims. But it would be very harsh to say no other animal thinks. This sounds very strange and harsh as a judgment on other animals. But it is quite correct to say that they don't think propositionally. That is, they don't think in terms of sentences, statements, judgments, assertions. But they certainly communicate with each other. It's an open question. That's a hard question actually to answer, whether it has any answer at all. I mean, it requires a fair amount of research and again, lot of a priori thinking with some empirical research is needed. It's a valid question whether thought can exist without language. I think Chomsky certainly thinks that thought exists wi- without language or without the help of language. Why? One very simple reason is I may struggle to express my clear thoughts. You may have very clear thoughts about something, but you may struggle to express yourself. This seems to suggest that thought is distinct from language, or at least the expression of language. This is an argument many philosophers present, and indeed even Chomsky has said this, that we struggle to express ourselves on certain occasions, even though the thought is very clear. The thought is clear, but the expression struggles, and that suggests that the ability or the capacity or the skill or whatever of speaking a language is quite distinct from thinking. But this is like a very phenomenalistic argument. I'm not completely sure what to make of it, but the argument does bother me. It's not like I'm very clear what the argument is, but it does, just like Jeffrey Hinton's argument that his machines are thinking and they're conscious and aware. That doesn't make any sense to me, and it doesn't convince me at all. But this argument also has never convinced me that somehow thought is distinct from language. I just think that there's something wrong with the argument, but I'm not sure what's wrong with it. There's just something wrong with this argument, but I'm not sure what's wrong with it.
I I have a naive question to ask, and that is, I understand the entire concept of minimal input and maximum output, right? But then there is a bird, not an animal. There is a bird, right, who could exactly imitate what humans say, and that is parrot, right?
Hmm.
Parrot could actually imitate the same language we teach them, or not even teach them, but they learn by their environment, right? So, how is this possible if we are talking about some genetically coded, pre-programmed way, which is supposed or presupposed that we will eventually learn language? How could they learn language?
Oh, parrot is
Or
not
for them,
learning a
is
language because language is not an imitation. Learning a language is not imitating anything. When a
right,
child speaks, or I speak, or you speak, we don't imitate other people. We just speak.
right.
A parrot doesn't speak, or maybe it utters certain sounds, which it has the vocal ability to do that. That's all there is to it. There is
So, so,
nothing else.
so
There
you
is
are
no
saying that
linguistic
the parrot.
ability. The parrot doesn't know French, English, etc. It can't speak to you, but there may be some particular three, four words that it can utter. So it can imitate certain words. But language
So,
learning is not imitation of any kind.
is it a fair analogy to say that parrots are more or less like AIs? The syntax goes in, they have the vocal ability to speak, but they do not understand the semantics of it. Can it be a fair assessment that way?
I don't think the syntax also goes in. So a
So
parrot
it
is
doesn't
not
really.
nothing. It is simply an imitating machine. You can say it's an imitating machine.
Right. Okay. It's a machine,
So
but an imitating machine.
it's like
Yes.
a dictaphone in some sense. You speak
Okay.
into a dictaphone and it speaks back. And later on you can play it, right? So that's all that
Uh,
a parrot is a rather primitive form of dictaphone. That's all. In
got
some
it.
sense.
Got it. Okay. Uh, so, Professor, without before leaving, if you could suggest a few papers, right, that could be read on language,
Mhm.
specifically on Chomsky, and also on AI, right, by me or possibly by how many number of people watch this till the end. So that would be great if you could.
So you want papers written by Chomsky?
By Chomsky or on Chomsky that have been very remarkable in the field, or on AI by any authors, like even in
So
favor or against everything.
there is a very nice book written by Chomsky called Rules and Representations. So these were the Kant lectures that Chomsky delivered at Stanford. I believe this is a 1986 book or an 84 book or something like that. So you can read that. There is also a book by Chomsky called Language and Thought, which is
Mm-hmm.
published by Moyer Bell. So Rules and Representations is published by Oxford, and maybe it's a Basil Blackwell book. And Language and Thought is published by Moyer Bell. So I think it's there in
Okay.
our department library actually. So that you can try reading. Chomsky has a paper. It's called Language and Nature. It's published in Mind, so far as I know, and so that paper could be a decent place to actually look at Chomsky's views. He has also a paper called Problems and Mysteries in Cognitive Science or something like that. So I'm not remembering the full title. I think this is very close to the right title. So
Okay.
that's a very good paper actually. He discusses many of the issues that you have raised here. So that's a very useful paper. Even I should go back and look at it actually. I read it many years ago. So, but it's a very useful paper, very very nice paper, where he looks at a lot of empirical evidence. So
Right.
then what was the other thing that you asked? One was Chomsky's
AI.
paper. AI. Oh, I say, well,
Artificial
frankly speaking, I have
intelligence.
not been much in AI at all. But I did read a recent book. So I
Okay.
think it is called Making AI Intelligible. It's by
Making
Josh
AI
Seaver.
intelligible.
Making AI Intelligible. So it's by Josh Seaver and Herman Kaplan. So you can read it. It's an interesting book. I mean, their idea is how do we understand AI outputs? Since AI output is just a machine output, what, how it has no semantics basically. How are we supposed to understand AI output at all? There is an interesting book on that. They have another book called Going the Whole Hog or something like that. It's not yet published, I think, but it is there on academia. So you can just download it. I have a copy. I'll just send it to you. So that's a good book because it actually deals with all these issues of whether AI can create a language and does it know a language and it is conscious, is it aware, does it have a mind? All that. I think they seem to think, Kaplan and George Devers appear to think that all these questions can be answered by the word yes. So, and they seem to think that people are being very biased against machines or something like that. But I have not read the books, but I have read the earlier book, Making AI Intelligible. But this book may be quite interesting actually. This Going Whole Hog. It's a very interesting book on Chat GPT and LLMs. So you should take a look at it definitely. It's a small book, 130 pages or something. Maybe you can just read it in 2 days or something. It's a very interesting, conversationally written, heavily argumentative book, of course. But it might provide some clarity, not just to me, but to lots of people regarding what's going on. I personally think lots of this myth making is going on. Very standard in human beings, actually. So we make myths about everything. So it's just something we do. I mean, it's just I'm not criticizing human beings for it. It's just something we do.
Right. Okay. Noted down. Also, what are the ideas lately that you are curious about as a human being or as a professor, as an academic? What are the ideas that have got you recently?
Lots of things that since I teach philosophy, there are lots of things that interest me. One question which attracted me to Chomsky is because I have a strong interest in the notion of innateness, and so that is what attracted me to Chomsky and his work. And so I profited from reading Chomsky, trying to figure. Not that I've got a clear answer to what is innate, but the question is indeed very, very interesting as to what is innate in a human being, so far as what we know is concerned, and is any part of what that is actually special to human beings, or is it just shared with other species? That's an interesting area which I find quite fascinating. But there are many other areas in philosophy which are equally fascinating. So it's a problem of plenty actually. So it's not very clear
Right.
which way to focus, but this is an area which is quite interesting. There is a lot of bias in philosophy against innateness. But I don't know why this is the case, but it is very difficult to convince philosophers that anything is innate. But it just seems quite irrational to me to think that no element of language is innate. That is just irrational. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe. Well, I suppose one has to read Chomsky and figure out stuff that he's saying, which is not easy, by the way, because his technical works can be quite technical.
Hmm.
So, but that's okay. One should be ready to put in the years and effort and try to figure it out. But what he's saying is
Right.
quite interesting.
Noted. The notion of innateness is what
And
is
knowledge is there.
interesting.
All kinds of notions are there in philosophy. So I work in philosophy of language. I don't work in philosophy of mind because I don't fully understand what is
Hmm.
happening. But I work in philosophy of language, and then there's philosophy of logic, which is interesting. So, and then there is this whole issue of innate knowledge, which is quite interesting. I also teach epistemology, so naturally I take an interest in questions of what is knowledge and what is understanding. These questions interest me a lot. So, but interest tend to shift or move over in many different over years. They tend to shift a lot. But my interest has been actually quite stable then. So that way I'm quite lucky.
I see. So, Professor, how was it answering basic questions to somebody who has no idea or no formal education in linguistics or in philosophy, right? How did it feel? Did
Actually,
I annoy you enough?
from your questions, it doesn't appear as if you are a rookie or something like that. I mean, you ask questions that are bang on the spot, so to speak. So it would be
Right.
a
Did you enjoy the conversation?
uh,
Did you enjoy the conversation?
yeah, yeah. Of course, I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't know how much time has passed, so I have no idea. But it was a perfectly enjoyable conversation. It's just that I can't
It's
remember
1 minute
Rice's
50
paper.
minutes.
That Rice's paper is. I think it's called Language and Conversation or something like that. The paper that Rice wrote. I can't remember the name of the paper. It's a very famous paper. I think it's called
What's
Language
it
and
about?
it's about conversational implications. It's there in
Right.
the first year syllabus, I think. Maybe.
And what does it mean?
Conversational implicature. It means that if I say certain things, they may imply certain things which are not literally said. So
Oh,
that's what.
conversational implications.
Yeah, there are implications of what you say, but you didn't say them. I
Right.
said,
Okay.
I can say, bring me a cup of coffee, and it may have a certain implication, which is it does not, the literal meaning doesn't mean that.
I
So
see. Okay.
it's a
Okay.
it's a good idea actually in pragmatics.
Definitely. So, Professor Bhowmick, like on a formal note, right, first to end the recording, I have to thank you, right, for accepting my invitation and coming on the platform to answer my basic questions, right? Because all I know so far has been or has been acquired from a very minimal study of linguistics so far, maybe a paper or two, or somewhere here, somewhere there on the YouTube, right? So that was very kind of you to accept my invitation. This was for the second time. We recorded one more. I will put the link in the video on the show notes if anybody is interested in watching the previous one as well, right? So, first of all, thank you for being here, sir. That is one thing. And on that note, I will end the recording. Just a minute, Professor. Yes.